The Phoenix Suns season unfortunately came to a close on Sunday. On today's episode of Locked On Suns, what went wrong in Game 4? Were the Suns actually just the worst team, or was there something else that could have been done? And we're already looking ahead to the offseason. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons and the host of the Just Basketball Show wherever you get your podcast. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Sunday night into Monday morning, a post-game edition after Game 4. We are free and available everywhere, including YouTube, so hit follow or subscribe if it's your first time finding us. Get a new episode in your feed every single Monday through Friday. It does not slow down, even though the season has finished. There are certainly going to be rumors here, as there already are around the Suns, and much more as we get toward the draft and the offseason, so keep it right here. Become an everydayer. Get locked onto the Phoenix Suns all year around. Today's episode, guys, brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on the classic Monopoly. Join your friends, join me, download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Joining me as he does every single Monday is Brendon Dueñas. He is a writer over at Bright Side of the Sun, and we are here to break down the aftermath of Game 4. So I will ask you, Brendon, as we usually do in these postgame episodes, we'll get to the series and everything. Why did the Suns lose this game, in your mind?
2 words. Anthony Edwards. He was unreal. Just as a fan of the game, I think I can just... It sucks when it happens against the team you like, but we saw the rise of a superstar that's at his age. The stuff he's doing is incredible. Minnesota has a great infrastructure around him, and he is that guy. And sometimes in the playoffs, players break out right before your eyes, and that's just what we saw, not only tonight, but throughout the series. So props to him, tip of the cap. Painful to watch as a Suns fan, but I'm sure if just as a basketball fan, like if you're watching that game, you're just like, damn. But some of the shots and some of the dunks, he was like, I just, the tough shot making, the confidence, the swag, the trash talk, like, he's a complete package. So just really, that's what it was for me.
Yeah, I think it was, I'm trying to count the points here, 10, 12, 14, 16 points in the fourth quarter, if that sounds right, and at least 1 or 2 assists. So sometimes that is as simple as it needs to be. I mean, 40 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 13 of 23 from the field, 7 of 13 from deep, 7 of 10 from the free throw line. He was the best player in the series, I think, even with a quiet Game 2. He comes to Phoenix, honestly looks even more consistent and even better on the road in the road games for Minnesota. Suns did not have an answer for him at all. Obviously, Josh Okogie steps in today with Grayson Allen out and Drew Eubanks benched. They threw doubles at him. They threw blitzes at him. They threw hedges at him. They switched. They guarded him with this guy, that guy. And he had pretty much an answer for all of it. And like you mentioned, Minnesota's other players did a great job supporting him. But it's still something to say, right? I mean, the guy is 22 going on 23, and he outplayed Devin Booker and Kevin Durant in a series. That's like, he's going to be all NBA this year. He's number 1 overall pick. We've known this is coming, but like you said, it kind of does tend to happen all at once. And this is Minnesota's first playoff series win since Kevin Garnett was around, and the Suns are just on the wrong side of that. But yeah, I mean, this one didn't have I guess the way I would put it, Brendon, is I said coming into this game, or I've said as the series has gone along, we haven't even been able to see an actual game where the Suns can look at their star power and the way their roster was built and feel like they're getting a chance to get the best out of that, which is basically this idea of like, hey, we're going to have games in the 115, 120, 130 range, even in the playoffs. and we're going to be able to outscore you. We're going to be able to out-execute you down the stretch in terms of just creating high-efficiency shots because we have star players and you don't, and we're going to win that way. And we finally got that kind of game because the offensive rebounding wasn't so skewed, the three-point shooting wasn't super skewed, the turnovers weren't, and we got one of those games, and Minnesota still won it. And I think that's, to me, like, it's kind of a version of the same thing you're saying. Like, their 2 stars look just as good as the Suns' 2 stars, and I definitely would not have expected that heading into the series at all.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also just with the game Bradley Beal had, that also has to be factored in. Like, he really had a rough night. Just seemed like everything he did was a mistake or just ended up wrong. And he was playing hard. The shots just weren't falling. He made some bad passes, some dumb fouls. And whenever that happens, sometimes it could snowball. And we saw that combined with what Ant did, I think really was just what the difference was in this game. But at the same time, you're down 3-0. Like, you already dug yourself that hole. That's why you can't. Yeah, that's why you can't do that. Like, there's no margin for error. There's going to be games like this where they pretty much had to be perfect, and Book and Durant showed up, and the rest of the team really didn't. And it's just kind of more of the same. It feels like just a roster that's not prepared.
Like, isn't it crazy to say that the Suns need to be perfect to beat the Wolves? Like, that's
exactly
how much has changed in a week. Like, it's pretty crazy. I think.
I was just going to say, I've never been more wrong about this team, too. Like, coming into the season, this is a team, and, obviously there's people that had their doubts or, there were skeptics about them, but I really thought this team was built to win a championship if they entered the playoffs healthy. Like, it seemed like that's they're going to click and figure things out, and I was completely wrong on that. So I'll absolutely own that, and it's very disappointing. Like, to get swept with this much star power, it's embarrassing. It's historically embarrassing. There's no way to sugarcoat it. Like, zooming out and just looking at it for what it is, just not just as an NBA fan, like, you look at the Suns getting swept with Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal healthy in a playoff series. That's embarrassing, and they should be embarrassed. There's changes that need to be made, and I just. But yeah, also got to credit to Minnesota at the same time, and I think they exposed a lot of the things that the Suns didn't have and need to go get. So that's another thing, and that's the matchup everyone wanted, right? So careful what you ask for.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing, is to say going into the series that this was a favorable draw for them, and maybe the one team we thought they actually could have beaten. And then to do what you do to them on the last day of the regular season and add even more fuel to that fire. And then for, a week later, basically, to go through it and feel like this team, you have to throw your best punch 50 times at them to be able to even get a win is crazy. And I think the place that maybe is the best way to sum up how a lot of us are feeling, or just from watching this game and this series, Brandon, is this, whether it's the 82 combined from Booker and KD, the lackluster performance of everybody else, and the way that it just felt like the other team had a million answers and the Suns had zero, it's almost exactly how I think Suns fans felt against the Nuggets. And I think that's where we should jump to next, because I think it's worth asking, were there solutions at all here? Was there a different way this series could have gone? And then obviously, what does that mean for the future, depending on how you answer that question? So we'll get into that all coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Have you ever wondered what adventure could be around the next corner? Well, our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capability to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class-exclusive Google built-in is your always-updating assistant to call on for almost anything. And gone are the days of connecting your phone with Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store, all built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Nissan's incredible lineup also includes the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder, which has room for up to 8 expansive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capability with 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. So take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Today's show, guys, also brought to you by Monopoly Go. I have a competitive side. That's probably in a lot of you as well. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play, you already talked about that, but there is so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards, winning together, getting prizes together, and much more. Unique stickers you can trade with your friends, complete albums for big prizes, new playing pieces to travel the boards with, and hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vault. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine, and there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover with Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now, free on the Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Okay, Brandon, so tonight we saw in Game 4, the Suns basically go fully into small ball. Nurkic gets into foul trouble early, so they go to it even faster, but obviously that was the plan either way. Eubanks doesn't play a single minute. Nasir Little gets dusted off. No Thad Young even. 14 minutes for Josh Okogie. And then 39 for Gordon, who basically was playing kind of like the power forward most of the night, guarding Cat at times and everything else. 6 points for him. Not a good night, really, either. That's one adjustment. I talked about some of the defensive adjustments we saw on Ant. There's smaller, more granular adjustments we did see along the way. When you look back on this series, do you think there's any version where it's more competitive? Is there some thing that the Suns should have or could have been doing? Is it the Grayson Allen injury? Is it turnovers, rebound? Like, is there anything you feel like could have made this competitive, or do you kind of line up with Vogel and some of the players the past couple days of just, they're just better, and that is what it is?
I think they definitely could have, but it comes down to adjustments. Like, if you rewind back to after that Game 1 loss, what I told you was just, they need to make adjustments before, like they need to make them premeditated instead of reacting to what's happening. And I feel like this entire series, they were just one step behind Minnesota on everything that was thrown out. And with the small ball stuff, I liked the Okogie minutes. I liked all of it, but it was just too late. Like I thought they had to try the small ball a lot earlier. I thought more bull minutes, some Thad Young minutes, just mixing things up. Okogie should have been a staple in this series, I thought, from the beginning, even if it's small stretches. But again, those aren't things that I think all at once are going to just individually that propel them to like win the series by any means. But I think if Grayson Allen is healthy, knocking down some shots, and if, you know, those first 2 games in Minnesota goes a little bit different, then the entire complexity of the series changes. So I think the entire series, Minnesota was better top to bottom. I thought they were more prepared top to bottom, and the adjustments that they made seemed a lot more just in control of like what they wanted to do, and Phoenix was just reacting to what Minnesota did, and great teams don't do that, and that's really what it comes down to. They were not a great team. The roster construction definitely limits them in a way, and I'm not sitting here saying that certain role players filling in for other role players is going to really make that much of a difference, but I thought just everything just felt a step behind. Coaching, players, just top to bottom.
Yeah, I kind of feel similarly. Like, to me, especially, I think it's been a learning experience for myself covering and watching closely the Suns in the playoffs the past few years. And I think one of the things that I feel like I've learned through that is teams are what they are. Like, at the end of the day, if you feel yourself imagining versions of what adjustments could be or how the team could be playing differently and things that they could and should be trying, and they're not things you've actually seen them do before, odds are that's not going to happen. And it's because they're fundamentally weaker at that point than their opponent. Like it does kind of reveal itself over the course of these series. And I think some of that is what you're talking about. But I know my question was, could it have been competitive? I don't think you're making the case the Suns were going to win this series if they played that young. And you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're saying versions of the same thing, which is maybe it didn't need to be a sweep, but were the Suns going to beat this version of Minnesota? I don't really think so. And I mean, that's pretty, I don't know. I think that requires some introspection, right? And I don't know, there's days and months to talk about all the things that they can do, but the place that I zoom in, Brandon, on my answer for that question of what could have been different is I think Jusuf Nurkic was about as bad as you possibly could have expected. I think he had an absolutely horrible series. I don't think he brought the requisite focus in terms of just making layups, executing as an offensive player, playing with the force to match Gobert and be a presence on the glass like he was in, the Thunder game where he had 20, 30 rebounds, some of the moments against Denver where he matched Nikola Jokic. That was what this series was going to demand of him, given that Minnesota's key strength is that they're huge and they have the Defensive Player of the Year on their team. He didn't do that. He was in foul trouble throughout. He disappeared as a playmaking hub and allowed himself to be taken out of those situations, baited into scoring and looking to score when he didn't need to. And I just don't think he brought the level of mental focus that he needed and really let this team down. And I think it kind of goes under the radar because he's not the star player on this team, and there are all these adjustments we can talk about, and Grayson goes down, and who's defending who, and all the scheme stuff we get into. He just didn't play up to the level that he did for most of the regular season in the 3 games these teams played. And if he is even his usual self, and a lot of the things I mentioned that he didn't do well in this series are part of the Jusuf Nurkic package, but they were just way worse in this series. If he's even the normal version of him that we got for most of this season in Phoenix, I think this series does look pretty different. I think the games are closer. I think the runs aren't as ugly. I think they're more competitive, and maybe Minnesota still wins. I think the Wolves certainly still win, but that would be my answer. I think Nurkic was really a letdown in this series.
Yeah, and it just boils down to what I've been kind of on about him for a while is like I think he's a solid player in regular season, very important to their success. Like the numbers don't lie there, but in the back of my mind and back of everyone's mind, really, it's like, is this guy a playoff center? Is he a 16-game center? Like I don't think he is, and there's reasons for that are just from a physical standpoint. Like he just physically can't do some things. He tries hard defensively. I think his passing is great. There's definitely positives to his game, but when he's not bringing it on one end and then getting exposed on the other against a team with 2 bigs like this, outside of Denver, I think this is one of the best. Like, is there a better matchup for him on paper in terms of like having an impact to help a team win a playoff series? There really isn't. So to me, it's like top to bottom is just very disappointing across the board from every single player. So I don't want to just single out Nurkic, but I do think I agree with you. Like there's definitely some. He left a lot to be desired and kind of fed into the narrative that I was concerned with when it came to just how impactful will he be come playoff time.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's probably a version of Nurkic's role in a playoff series that can have an impact, but I don't think it's playing 35, 40 minutes as the only playable center on the team. So
exactly,
just like you're saying, like, hey, let's not, certainly I don't think he's the only reason. Like I said, I mean, they're probably, as we watch this series unfold, I think you'd be pretty hard-pressed to make a case the Suns were going to ever win this series. I'm just saying that's, to me, why it could have been more competitive. But he was not done many favors being that his backup was unplayable for the whole season. I mean, we knew Eubanks wasn't going to cut it like after a month. and they didn't have a better choice. And, you can talk about your Thad Youngs or Bol Bols. I think, to me, that kind of falls in the basket of, like, if you're getting that desperate, you're going to lose the series in either way. Bol Bol's not going to win you games,
I beg to differ.
And so it's just one of those. It's a gut punch, right? I mean, the team's not as good as they thought they were. The roster wasn't built as soundly as you might have hoped, and guys were exposed. I mean, even Grayson, like, you could talk about the injury. He was not impactful in the first 2 games.
Yep.
I know he got hurt in both of those games and didn't even play full minutes, but if you just take the moments where he was healthy, he barely did anything. And again, that's not because of him. He's a role player. You're not going to be like, go grab the ball and create a bucket for yourself, Grayson Allen. But it is just a lot of things that were brought to the surface, I think. But maybe none more than, organization and communication and leadership and the things that we think of with the coach. We also got a piece from The Athletic underscoring that there is some uncertainty around the coaching situation. So we will talk about where that position might be headed for the Suns coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by DoorDash. This Mother's Day, get something thoughtful for mom with DoorDash. Surprise her from wherever you are with fresh bouquets, the latest tech, gift cards, self-care treats, and more to make her day that much better. Maybe you're across the country. Maybe you're just down the street. DoorDash can be the place to get you hooked up with the gift that will make her happy. Does mom have a sweet tooth? Is she a tech enthusiast, a beauty connoisseur, or is she an outdoorsy type? No matter what she's into, you can make her smile with a fruit or flower bouquet, makeup, tech gear, workout gear, and more. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend at least $15 on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. Again, use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend at least $15 on that order. That's promo code LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. Okay, Brandon, let's close it out. So basically the bottom line here is, according to Shams Charania in a piece at The Athletic, as well as Adrian Wojnarowski over the weekend on ESPN's studio show, the Suns are thinking about moving on from Frank Vogel. I'll read the biggest snippet, I would say, the intro of the piece at The Athletic. I believe you have not heard this, and it maybe some fans are hearing this for the first time. I know The Athletic is paywalled here, so here's the snippet, all right? Zoom in on that loss to the Clippers April 9th. They go down 35-4. They go down 53-16, 66-33 at halftime. And it says, quote, the head coach yelled so much that his voice could be heard outside the locker room. There was only one problem. On this night, Suns players weren't buying it. The outburst seemed forced and out of character in their eyes. It continued at the next day's shoot-around in Los Angeles, with Vogel tearing into the Suns before that night's road win over the Clippers. Vogel's eruption left players rolling their eyes, sources briefed on the matter told The Athletic. One player even told The Athletic he had to keep from laughing. Later on, it talks about how Durant was not satisfied with the way he was utilized. And basically, Brandon, it sounds like they will think about firing Vogel here or, quote, at the very least, discuss adjustments to Vogel's staff. Let me just ask you before we think about what they will do. Do you think Vogel should have this job next season?
I do not. For that reason alone. I mean, losing the locker room, that's tough to come back from. Like, I just, to me, that snippet where there's smoke, there's fire. To me, that's just a little, that's their way of kind of letting it out to the masses that this is going to happen. It's just more of, you usually see this right before a firing takes place. So to me, like, my gut feeling too is that this is just preempting a move. That there needs to be a fall guy, right? Something like this, there has to be, and whether it's fair or not, whether you like Frank or not, I think that he's the most obvious candidate.
I guess, that's what I'm asking. Do you think it's fair? let's say he's fired tomorrow, do you think that's fair?
Yeah, getting swept is with the team with this high of aspirations, and you're the head coach. I do think that's warranted, and it's a business. So the NBA isn't fair sometimes. We just saw what Minnesota did to Phoenix, and Frank is the head coach, and there you could talk about personnel and everything like that, but at the end of the day, they got 4-0'd, and for a team that's trying to win a championship in the first round, getting swept, just to me it's a no-brainer that the answer is yes, but there's a lot of context that comes with that. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I don't think he's helped by the fact that the roster is pretty, at least the core version of what the team is and what you need to build around and scheme around isn't changing, They're not trading Devin Booker unless he demands it. They probably can't trade Bradley Beal if they wanted to, and they only got Kevin Durant a year ago, right? So bang, bang, bang. That's not changing. Grayson Allen just signed an extension. Yusuf Nurkic is one of the most untradeable players in the NBA. Sorry, it is what it is. He makes a lot of money, and we just saw him be pretty ineffective in the playoffs, coming off years where he couldn't even stay on the court. So I don't think people are going to be banging down the door to get Yusuf Nurkic. They could probably trade him if they attach stuff to him, like their pick this year, but that's the only way. So it doesn't help that you can't give a coach a roster that suits him better, and I think that is probably the best reason for saying it's kind of all you can change. You got to do something, then you got to do that, right? But my only caveat in terms of what I think they should do versus what they will do, and I'll tell you what I think they will do next, is they have to know and feel good about who they're going to get instead.
Yep.
Because I don't think any of us would feel great about bringing in a first-time guy right now. Some Adrian Griffin part 2, right, in Milwaukee, who just looked aimless and didn't even get the respect of the locker room, let alone, I think, lose it, That's the risk you run when you bring in somebody who's never been in this position before. And if you think about it that way, okay, Steve Clifford, Jacques Vaughn, is that the only guys who got fired? Probably not really. Jacques Vaughn was the coach of the team. Kevin Durant just left, so probably not him. And then Steve Clifford's pretty much retiring, and neither one of those guys would be an upgrade, really. Mike Budenholzer's out there. Is there anybody getting fired from the teams that could lose this year over the next couple of weeks beyond this? Ty Lue comes to mind. We know the Suns pursued him, but he works for a team with a really rich owner, and that team might win their first round series. I don't know if that situation is going to break down in a way that makes Lue leave. You got to know what you're doing instead, because if you hire Frank Vogel and get somebody equal to or potentially lesser than Vogel, then I don't think anybody's going to feel like that's really an upgrade, even if we all think, yeah, you kind of have to try something. So that's where I'm at, is I think you could easily end up in a position where you feel the same or worse about your head coaching spot, even if you roll the dice again. I don't think it's a sure thing you're getting a better coach, even if we all agree Vogel's not the perfect coach.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point, because obviously the grass is always greener, and you don't know, if you don't know what you're getting into, then there is definitely risk with that. But at the same time, if the locker room is as lost as it seems, like the article says it is, then to me, just cutting ties for that reason alone makes sense. Because I just don't see how you could bring someone back that with stories like that leaking. To me, that's coming.
Who do you think,
that's internal.
That came from.
Oh, that's internal for sure.
The locker room stuff. Of course, it's of course. I mean, no one else knows, right? So it's definitely internal. But
I
coach on the staff or player or agent of a player. Who
I think it's an
wants to
agent
coach
of
gone?
a player. I think it's definitely an agent of a player. That's the reading between the lines of just how it was relayed. Assistant, I can't see that at this point. Especially Kevin Young, he'll be at BYU. So to me, it feels like it could be a player. Who knows? You never know these days. But yeah, JJ Redick.
I definitely don't know either. It says sources. you never really know with any of this. I think you're right to assume that it's strategic. I mean, all this is always strategic. That's kind of how this all works in 2024. But the other part of the news here is that General Manager James Jones is expected to continue overseeing team building for the Suns. So as we get to like what they will do, Brandon, I think the other part that's relevant here is pregame, because this article had not come out yet, but the Woj report was out there. Duane Rankin of the Arizona Republic asked Frank Vogel, hey, you've been talking about building, good habits for next year, and you've been talking about this being your first trial through this, playoff stress, and do you expect to be given a second year to do all of what you're talking about or build on it? And he said he's very confident, and he said, I have the full support of Matt Ishbia. So, I don't know. You couple that, which is a very confident thing. Most coaches don't care about how they look on social media. They're, grown men in their 40s and 50s and whatever. But at the same time, you're going to it's embarrassing to be wrong, say something like that pretty much unprovoked. He didn't have to go that far. So that's an interesting data point. And then this hedge in the Athletic article, Brandon, or make adjustments to his staff, which is kind of what we're seeing in Chicago. If people have been paying attention over there, they fired Mo Cheeks, who's been with Billy Donovan forever, and some other guys on that staff. And it seems like management and ownership are kind of stepping in to tell Billy Donovan who's going to be working for him rather than Billy Donovan getting to pick. I could see something like that, but it's also kind of what we just saw with Kevin Young, isn't it? So I don't know. I could see a world where either one happens, and I think a lot of it will. I don't think it'll happen tomorrow, would be my one thing, Brandon, and I think that they will do some canvassing. I think Ishbia and James Jones, if he is going to stay in place, it's time to get on the phone with coach agents and say who's going to be available, who would be interested in this job. And if you get good smoke signals back, then you fire your guy and go through the search.
Oh, yeah. The one thing we all know about Matt Ishbia is he's aggressive, he wants to win, and he's not afraid to ruffle feathers. So I think that's why I look at the Vogel situation, and obviously if, like you said, if they can't find someone that makes sense to replace him, that is either A, a clear upgrade, or B, you think could get this team to the right level and manage the egos of these players, and that's a very tough thing to do as a head coach with a team as talented as the Suns, is like finding someone that can balance those personalities and make it work. So to me, if you could check those boxes, and money's not really, it feels weird saying this as a Suns fan at this point, but money's not really an issue at this point. Like I don't think he's afraid to like cut ties there and go all in. We already saw it. They went all in with Fizdale. They made Kevin Young one of the highest paid assistants. Like they're not afraid to spend on that. They invested in the staff. So to me, even though Frank said what he said, like I take that with a grain of salt, just because I think Ishbia is going to do whatever it takes to win. And if he finds a better option, he will take it. And the same goes with the players and their draft pick this summer. I think that's as good as gone as well. Like they're going to try to keep bringing in the best players and the best coaches, and it's a business, and I think we're going to see a lot of that this offseason. So I want to get too attached to Frank or for really anyone on this roster outside of Book and KD.
Yeah. So I don't have anything to add, I guess, with what you said there. As far as the front office goes, I think that James Jones staying, it's kind of surprising to hear that so fast, but at the same time, I would keep an eye on the wording there. It says expected to continue oversee team building for the Suns. Sometimes our news-breaking friend at The Athletic is not so careful with his words, so it could just be that he said some random thing. It also could be that James Jones is technically the president of basketball operations here. They could put a GM in place or something like that, and it would be the same version of messing with the assistant coaching staff, except front office version, right? So keep that in mind as we think about it. And you mentioned David Fizdale. I would also just think about the fact that he could probably get an interview here. As we're talking about people who have been head coaches before and been in postseason situations. Fizdale had a voice in huddles. He was mentioned by players often. I think he could definitely be somebody that's in the mix there. But all right, that'll wrap us up. Plenty of time to talk about all the rest of that. The Sun season is over. It died I was going to say slow. That's the opposite. It died a very quick death. It was put out of its misery in 4 games, and that chapter, very weird chapter of Suns basketball, is over. The next one begins tomorrow as we march back toward October. So there you go. Some optimism to close it out. Hit follow or subscribe. We'll have episodes every day throughout the offseason. Don't forget to read Brandon and the staff over at Bright Side of the Sun, and we will catch all of you guys tomorrow.